Hi, this is an answer to be serious, and I couldn't find the comment, and I wanted to, put a link to it or whatever. But basically, she was saying that, among other things, there's this one part I do remember that I wanted to answer, so I don't have to find the comment exactly. But she said that if we get rid of the objective, the idea of the objective, and I assume she meant the idea of the objective since that's what we were talking about. As opposed to we can't get rid of the world. We're not talking about annihilating the world. We're talking about our ideas of the world. That if we get rid of the objective world as an idea, what do we replace it with? And it got a little bit long um, for a comment reply. So I'm just going to make a video reply, and I'm going to read the comment. And I'm not that careful when I write comments, so who knows? It probably won't read that well as a script, but so anyway, the answer in what replaces objectivism when it fails is relativism. Objectivism is an idea that the object is of quality XYZ in itself, that its qualities are aspects of it. They are objective, absolute aspects which adhere with the thing or in here, in the thing. The thing as a thing in itself, right? So defined by itself, by its own being. It knows everything about itself. So it knows all its qualities or could know, right? Because those qualities are right there with it. And so that thing absolutely is X, Y, Z. And perspective relativism is considered to be due merely to the transformations and the warping that come from the transformations from the core real qualities that you are absolutely, objectively, when you transform that to someone else's frame of reference or with a faulty measuring device, or there's elements of admission to skeptical kinds of principles, not in principle but in reality that we can only measure so well. So now this is exactly like if we take a quality, let's say your velocity, then we think it adheres to you, in you, yourself, a part of yourself, and everyone else that were to see your velocity differently from your true velocity sees that merely because they are getting a warped version of that information. Okay, so if you're standing by the road still and you appear to move from the point of view of someone in the car, it's actually because they're really moving. They've gotten the wrong number unless they take that into account. Okay, that's the objective way of looking at qualities. Okay, quality of an object, like its momentum, its velocity. Momentum, of course, being velocity and mass together. Okay, and it's also an attempt within objectivity to explain relativistic phenomena. Now, in relativity itself, there is no velocity in the object. Okay, and that's the physically true. There is no velocity within you. You do not have a true velocity. There's no quality of you that is velocity whatsoever. If you were the only thing in the universe, all of a sudden, or for some reason, there's no such thing really as velocity. So no, somebody cannot say what your not you or anybody else, what your velocity is objectively. Even though at the very same time you do have a velocity. You have a lot of velocities. They happen to be relative to a great number of other bodies in the universe. So velocity exists only in the relation. That's relation, relativity. Relate, relativity. It's a common root there. It's important in this particular family of terms. The velocity exists only in the relation or comparison between you and another body. This is what bears the fact of velocity, which is why there is only relative velocity and no absolute velocity. Now, you can say that it's objective that your relative velocity with respect to another body is XYZ, which means it's objectively true that it's a relativistic situation, that things are relative. And the age-old argument between relativity and objectivity is settled in favor of relativity by concession. If objectivity were to say that the objective fact is that something's a relative and everything is relative in the end, then relativity obviously would win that argument. But anyway, to speak that way is to adopt a Ptolemaic system of epicycles to preserve objectivity as the official, if not actual, center of epistemology. We say, well, yeah, everything's relative, but it's objective that it's relative. So it's just another way of saying, so it's still objective. We can still hold on to that. We can still think of this false way because this false way of looking at things, it seems to apply to the actual way, the relative way. And let's forget that there's a contradiction between objectivity and relativity. And as you know, I'm fine with that because that's the meaning of saying objectivity is really a subset of subjectivity. To say, okay, yeah, we've explained what the situation is. Let's go ahead and just use the words, the word objectivity and objectivism again. But let's just understand that what we're talking about is this fine-tuned set of highly studied and correlated and measured subjective experiences. What takes objectivity's place is an idea of many different subjects. You accept subjectivity first and reach a solipsistic materialism, right? That even if you're in a dream, that you're still going to feel pain if the dog bites you. Okay, dream dogs must hurt, real dogs, whatever they are. You have a solipsistic materialism. You exist, everything else exists with respect to you. Then you accept the idea of other willful creatures. And I haven't really gone into why we accept that idea, okay? But like all things, it's because of our perceptions of what seems practical with our perceptions, what works well for us in terms of surviving. And once we do accept that there's other subjects besides ourselves, then we step past solipsism into intersubjectivity, okay? And then we have an intersubjective materialism. Now, this isn't just what we all agree about, okay? Intersubjectivity, as in the idea of subjectivity, is, whatever you think as the subject goes. And one thing, too, is people forget is that just because we have a subjective truth doesn't mean it's whatever you think. You can't say, I think I do like pie, and we're like, maybe you're 3 years old, and we've seen you eat pie, and every time you hated it. It's like, no, you don't, you can't just what you say isn't automatically true. You can't say, in my subjective frame of reference, I'm 6 foot tall, and you're 5 foot tall. No, because did you check? I mean, there's a solipsistic materialism where you still need to be empirical. And once you accept the idea of other subjects, then you get this an empiricism that we can share. But it's not just psychological, it's physical, okay? In principle, everyone is very careful in their rest frame measurements. So when they're compared to those that others have taken, one has a genuine idea of how the complex facts fit together. And physically, this is not just a matter of measurements and cognitive things like that, but the fact that, in this system, collisions are happening generally pairwise. It's two things running into each other, and it's just a lot of that makes it look and be this continuous system that we see. And anyway, when you have intersubjectivity, obviously many of the facts will align, especially if you've been careful. Especially if I've used a measuring stick and handed the same measuring stick to somebody else. So our frames will overlap, and they will bind into a larger frame of shared intersubjective ideas with unshared subjective ideas, sort of on the peripheries, shared maybe by smaller groups all the way down to the point of the individual. And that structure can be a complex, coherent whole, and it works as a functional reference frame. So we can conceive of since we communicate in this network and we're sharing all our subjective views, we hear back feedback on what the intersubjective consensus is, and we can use it as a reference frame, even if we disagree with it, even if we decide not to go with it. Now, I would say, in general, I feel that in this relativistic model, interactions occur between pairs, and when two interactors interact, it can be said to bear, be, or become facts, also in pairs.